Good afternoon. The 10,113 meeting of the Security Council is called to order. I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute on behalf of the Council to the delegation of the United Kingdom for its service as President of the Council for the month of February. I'm sure I speak for all members of the Council in expressing deep appreciation to the entire United Kingdom team for the great diplomatic skill with which they conducted the Council's business last month. The provisional agenda for this meeting is maintenance of international peace and security, children, technology, and education in conflict. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with the Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, Under-Secretary General of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of the Secretary General, I want to thank you for your leadership in organizing today's discussion. This debate comes at a moment of exceptional relevance. Today, we face the highest number of armed conflicts since the Second World War. The number of civilians killed in these conflicts is the highest in decades. Our reality is clear. When conflicts erupt, children are among those most severely affected. We have been reminded of this truth over the last 2 days. Schools in Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman have closed and moved to remote learning owing to the ongoing military operations in the region. And we are aware of the reports from Iran about the death of possibly dozens of children, allegedly as the result of a strike that hit an elementary school in the town of Minab. United States authorities have announced they are looking into these reports. Globally, 1 in every 5 children is living in or fleeing a conflict zone. This adds up to 473 million children. Grave violations against children, verified by the United Nations, increased by a staggering 25% from 2023 to 2024. Rape and other forms of sexual violence rose by 35%. These horrific figures should impel us to do more to protect children in conflict. I pay tribute to the First Lady of the United States for her work to give visibility to the issue of children in conflict, and particularly for her personal engagement to reunite Ukrainian children with their families. Madam President, when conflicts do not rob children of their life and physical security, they deprive them of the right to have a quality education and a future of opportunities. 234 million children in crisis in conflict situations currently need educational support. 85 million are completely out of school. In violent conflicts, schools can be one of the only safe spaces that protect children from recruitment, trafficking, and exploitation. Schools can safeguard health and hygiene, provide psychosocial support, and connect families to essential services. Education in conflict zones is life-saving and life-sustaining. And yet schools, teachers, and education infrastructure continue to suffer violence. In 2024 alone, the United Nations verified a total of 2,374 attacks on schools and hospitals. Many more are unverified due to a lack of access. Most attacks in 2024 took place in Ukraine, Israel, the occupied Palestinian territory, and Haiti. In its resolution 2601, the Council urged all conflict parties to immediately cease attacks against schools, children, and teachers, and noted that such attacks are in contravention of international humanitarian law. It called on all parties to safeguard, protect, respect, and promote the right to education. The international legal framework is clear. We must act. Madam President, the challenges of providing quality education in conflict situations are tremendous. Infrastructure, from electricity to classrooms to digital connectivity, is often crumbling or at risk. Educators are few and far between. We face a shortage of 44 million teachers in conflict settings. Digital learning can offer access to education when schools are closed or inaccessible, or when students are fleeing violence. And the UN has made a concerted investment in these approaches. Private-public partnerships, when grounded in strong ethical frameworks, can help us deliver and expand access to innovative education technologies. For example, UNICEF's Learning Passport, developed in partnership with Microsoft, offers 10 million children in 47 countries a mobile learning platform where they can have continuous access to quality education. The Instant Network Schools program, a joint project of the Vodafone Foundation and UNHCR, allows refugees and teachers to access digital educational content and the internet, improving the quality of education in some of the most marginalized communities in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and South Sudan. Technology allows education to reach the most vulnerable and those excluded from the formal educational system. In Afghanistan, to respond to the exclusion of 2.2 million girls from education, UNESCO is mobilizing digital technologies to bring learning directly into the homes and communities, reaching close to 9,000 school communities in the country. To ensure that opportunities provided by technology are realized, we must mitigate its risks. Children in conflict face heightened online threats, exploitation, trafficking, radicalization, digital recruitment into armed groups, and cyberbullying. Digital education must therefore actively promote child protection with risk assessments at every stage, from conception to deployment. We must strengthen legal and policy frameworks to protect the rights of the child in the digital space, in line with international human rights law. Technology companies have a particular role to play in providing safeguards to their users, especially children and young people. Unfortunately, funding for education in emergencies has dropped by 24%, even though needs are increasing. We call on member states to do more to meet funding gaps in education. Madam President, the most effective way to protect children from conflict is to prevent and end wars. Building peace is at the heart of what the United Nations does. We must all work together toward this goal. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as First Lady of the United States. First, my heartfelt condolences to the families who have lost their heroes, who sacrificed their lives for freedom. Their bravery and dedication will always be remembered. I extend my earnest wishes for a swift and smooth recovery to all those who have been injured. You are in my thoughts and prayers during these challenging times. The U.S. stands with all of the children throughout the world. I hope soon, peace will be yours. Ambassador Waltz, I'm grateful for the distinguished honor to preside over the United Nations Security Council as the United States assumes its presidency. Undersecretary General DiCarlo, thank you for welcoming me here today. Your generosity reflects the dignity with which you hold your post. Thank you for your warm welcome, United Kingdom, France, Russian Federation, China, Greece, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Denmark, Panama, Liberia, Somalia, Colombia, Pakistan, Bahrain, and Latvia. Collectively, your mission to maintain security while upholding the responsibility of preventing conflict during times of both war and peace is significant, must be applied evenly, and should never be carried out lightly. Peace does not need to be fragile. Enduring peace will be achieved when knowledge and understanding are fully valued within all societies. The value placed on education by nations' leaders shape the core of their country's belief system. A nation that makes learning sacred protects its books, its language, its science, and its mathematics. It protects its future. This leads to something powerful, to greater understanding, moral reasoning, and tolerance of others. Peace. Children raised in a culture rooted in intelligence develop confidence, innovate, build, compete, and maintain a deep value system. Their knowledge fosters empathy for others, transcending geography, religion, race, gender, and even local norms. They become caring people. But children raised in culture rooted in ignorance are surrounded by disorder and sometimes even conflict. These societies are filled with rigid thinkers who embrace prejudice and shun human dignity. When a nation restricts thought, it restricts its own future. Education is widely recognized as a fundamental human right, and yet today, so many children and young adults are banned from attending secondary schools and universities. The cost is not abstract. Imagine the loss of potential to our collective humanity, new medical breakthroughs, advancement in food security, groundbreaking technologies, all gone. A society that excludes vast segments of its population can realize only a fraction of its potential. Societies ruled by knowledge and wisdom are therefore more peaceful. We must cultivate a just moral imagination for the next generation, for our children, building an infrastructure of understanding. Knowledge is a power. It shapes titans of industry and inspires courageous social pioneers. We must capture this positive energy and ignite it across continents to transform our world throughout our digitally connected human race. Intellect blossoms humanity's fundamental needs: shelter, food security, clean water, and healthcare. And predictably, almost all communities will have access to knowledge within our lifetimes. The global community must facilitate complete access to technology so that every individual can reach their full potential through education. We must strive to achieve connectivity in the most remote locations and the furthest distances from our cities. This objective is entirely feasible and is already on the way. Today, roughly 6 billion individuals, about 70% of people on planet Earth, have a mobile device and use the internet. If our nations band together, we can close the technological divide, empowering all to reach their full potential. From a solitary farmer on a remote Greek island to a quiet genius in Somalia or a dreamer in uptown Manhattan, anyone can read the vast treasury of human knowledge created over centuries, which is now codified and accessible through artificial intelligence. As a single digital nation state inevitable, perhaps this idea isn't so far-fetched, since digital currency and payment system via blockchain plus AI's massive factual database is already revolutionizing media and financial markets. We are in the age of imagination, a period where technology can be free and unrestricted by land borders. Indeed, now is the time for our generation to elevate our children above ideology through access to wisdom. AI is democratizing knowledge, which was once confined to university libraries. AI is creating a new reality for our children by distributing the traditional academic path to information. Today, almost anyone, anywhere can access a vast universe of data in the palm of their hand. Let's connect everyone to knowledge through AI, including those in the most remote geographic regions of our world. Look at what this truly means. In a matter of seconds, without travel, one can quickly learn about another's beliefs, religions, customs, and histories. We are open, and it is empowering. AI can provide us with an understanding of each other's needs and the needs of our children. AI is redefining who gets to participate in the global economy of ideas. I believe our shared intellect future will prove to be a more secure, harmonious, advanced civilization. The path to peace depends on us taking responsibility to empower our children through education and technology. Conflict arises from ignorance, but knowledge creates understanding, replacing fear with peace and unity. Security Council members, I encourage you to pledge to safeguard learning in our communities and promote access to heightened education for all. I implore you to build a future generation of leaders who embrace peace through education. Thank you. I resume my function as President of the Council. I give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Madam President. First Lady of the United States, Ms. Melania Trump, I would like to thank you for chairing this important meeting and for highlighting one of the most urgent challenges of our time: the growing intersection between children, technology, and education in situations of armed conflict. I would like also to thank USG DiCarlo for her, as always, valuable insights. Madam President, today, in armed conflict, millions of children are affected daily. Surrounded by violence and insecurity, children are also deprived of the right to education, i.e., of their own very future. When schools are attacked, used for military purposes, or destroyed, children lose not only a safe place to learn, but also a sense of stability, protection, and above all, a hope for a better tomorrow. Therefore, innovative solutions need to be found to mitigate the impact of safe education, disruption, and restore education as a protective framework and a space of effective learning. In an era increasingly shaped by cutting-edge technological progress, education, technology, and innovation can form a powerful nexus to improve learning outcomes, foster peace, strengthen resilience of societies, and protect children. Nevertheless, at the same time, technology can expose children to serious risks, especially in conflict situations. As children in armed conflict face increasing risk of online harm, including online recruitment, exploitation, and sexual abuse, the Security Council Children's and Armed Conflict Framework has a duty to remain attentive to these evolving dynamics. Digital dimensions of recruitment, exploitation, and incitement are directly relevant to the protection mandate of this Council. Monitoring and reporting mechanisms should, where appropriate, reflect these emerging risks. In order to facilitate effective teaching and learning everywhere and under any circumstances, a strategic shift needs to take place that will allow for an integrated digital transformation of educational systems. This transformation entails action-oriented national plans and policies, clearly articulated educational goals, and sustained funding. Our guiding principle should always be to ensure the rights and best interests of the child, as well as their protection from online harm. Madam President, colleagues, the risks entailed by the use of digital technology are universal, even in time of peace. As stated recently in Geneva by the Greek Foreign Minister Yorgos Gerapetritis, the need to safeguard children's role and action in the future, in view of technology's advancements through the vital contribution of education, is of paramount importance. The digital environment as a public space must be safe, teaching children not just how to use technology, but crucially, how to protect themselves from it. In this endeavor, the potential of the private sector can also be utilized in collaboration with governments, civil society, and local communities, while adhering to relevant codes of conduct and human rights obligations. This partnership can contribute to the development of digital solutions of education that reflect our local reality and needs, ensure effective and flexible implementation, protect online safety, and help overcome barriers, including related to gender and disabilities. Madam President, the responsible use of technology and innovation can build bridges to safe education, dignity, and hope for children in armed conflict. It is our shared responsibility to ensure this access. Our ultimate objective is to cultivate a genuine global human rights culture by nurturing empathy in the next generation. If we can instill in a child the profound belief that human dignity is non-negotiable, that child will inevitably become a leader who champions peace. Ultimately, this deeply rooted culture is our most powerful defense against turmoil and armed conflict. Our engagement in the education of children is an investment in peace, and Greece, also through its work in the CAC Working Group, will remain at the forefront of this discussion. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. Thank you. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madame la
Thank
Présidente,
you, Madam
Première Dame des
President.
États-Unis,
Madam President, First Lady of the United States, allow me to
de vous souhaiter la
thank you,
bienvenue,
to wish you a welcome,
d'assurer les
and
États-Unis de
to
notre soutien
assure
à
the
l'aube
United
de leur
States
présidence du Conseil de
of our
sécurité
support on the beginning of
et de
their
saluer la
presidency of the
décision
Security
de
Council
dédier ce
and
premier
to commend their
événement
decision to
aux
devote
enfants dans les
this
conflits
first
armés sous
event
l'angle des
to
technologies.
children in armed conflict from the perspective
La
of
France
technology.
son engagement
France
constant en faveur
reaffirms
de la
its
protection
constant
des enfants
commitment
et du plein
to the
respect de leurs
protection
droits
of children
fondamentaux, y
and for
compris
the
dans
full
l'espace
respect of their
numérique.
fundamental rights,
Nous
including
saluons
in the
à cet
digital
égard
space. And in this
vos
regard,
efforts personnels
we commend your
en tant
personal
que Première
efforts
Dame
as First Lady
avec le lancement de
with the
l'initiative
launch of the Fostering the Future
et
initiative,
l'adoption du
as
Take
well
It
as the
Down
adoption of the
Act
Take It Down
contre la
Act
diffusion sans consentement d'images
against the
personnelles
non-consensual
pour les enfants
circulation
sans consentement.
of personal images that all
La
too
France
often
vous
children
remercie
fall victim
également pour
to.
votre rôle de
France also would like to
médiation,
thank you for your
ayant
mediation
contribué au
role
retour de
that
plusieurs enfants
contributed to the
ukrainiens
return of several Ukrainian
transférés
children
de force
that
ou
were
déportés en
forcibly
Russie.
transferred or deported to Russia.
Nous remercions la sous-secrétaire
We
générale,
thank
Madame
the
Rosemary
Undersecretary General,
DiCarlo,
Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo,
pour ses propos éclairants.
for her edifying
Madame la
briefing.
Présidente, le sujet qui nous réunit
Madam
aujourd'hui est au
President, the
cœur de
subject that
l'action du
brings us here
Conseil de
today is
sécurité.
at the heart of the
Il
work of the
exige une
Security Council, and it
coordination
requires
renforcée autour des
greater
trois piliers de
coordination
notre
around
organisation.
the three pillars of our
D'abord,
organization.
ce Conseil
First
doit
of all,
agir
this council must
pour
act
prévenir et mettre un
to
terme
prevent
à l'utilisation des
and
nouvelles
put an end to the
technologies
use
contre
of
la
new
paix et la
technologies
sécurité
against
internationale.
international peace and security.
L'usage malveillant des
The
technologies
malicious
numériques
use of digital
accroît la
technologies is
violence
on
des
the
conflits
rise.
armés.
It
Des
is
enfants
increasing
en sont les
violence in armed
premières
conflict, and
victimes.
children are the primary
En
victims
Ukraine,
of
les
that.
attaques massives et
In
répétées de drones
Ukraine, the
russes
massive and
tuent,
repeated Russian drone
blessent
attacks are
et ont aussi un
killing,
impact
injuring,
profond
and
sur la vie
also
quotidienne
having
des enfants.
a profound impact on the
À
daily
l'école,
lives of
où
children.
les cours sont
At
interrompus
school,
chaque jour
classes
par
are
des
being
alertes
interrupted
aériennes.
each day by air
À la
raid
maison,
sirens, and at
où les
home,
enfants passent une partie de
children
leur soirée et de
spend
leur nuit
part
dans
of
des
their
abris
nights
froids
and
et
their
humides
evenings
du fait
in
des
cold and
attaques
damp
menées par la
shelters
Russie.
because of Russian attacks.
Dans d'autres conflits, les
In other
réseaux sociaux sont
conflicts, social
utilisés pour
networks are
diffuser de la
being used to
propagande
spread
ciblant les mineurs,
propaganda
pour
targeting
faciliter
minors,
leur
to
recrutement par les
facilitate
groupes
their
armés,
recruitment by
pour
armed
exploiter
groups,
leur
to
vulnérabilité.
exploit their vulnerability.
Le Conseil de sécurité,
The Security
en étroite
Council, in
collaboration,
close
coordination avec l'ensemble des parties
coordination
prenantes,
with all
doit poursuivre son
stakeholders,
action,
must
notamment dans
continue
le
its
cadre des
work,
agendas enfants et
including
conflits armés
within
et
the
jeunes pays
children and armed
sécurité,
conflict and
dans lesquels
youth
la
peace
France
and
est
security
pleinement investie.
agendas that France is fully invested
En
in.
renforçant les capacités de
By
protection de l'enfance
bolstering
dans les opérations
child
de maintien de
protection
la paix
capacities in
et les missions
peacekeeping
politiques
operations
spéciales,
and special
et en
political
soutenant le
missions,
mécanisme de
and in
surveillance et de
supporting the
communication mis en
monitoring
place
and
par la
reporting mechanism
résolution
established by
1612 de
Resolution
2005,
1612 of
le Conseil permet la
2005,
collecte
the
d'informations
Council
sur les
supports the
violations
gathering of
graves
information
commises contre
on
les
the
enfants
grave
dans les zones de
violations
conflits
committed
armés.
against children
Ce
in armed
dispositif
conflict
est un
zones.
levier
This is an
indispensable
essential
pour
tool
renforcer la
for strengthening
prévention et lutter
prevention
contre l'impunité.
and combating impunity.
Il faut agir ensuite au service des droits de l'homme.
Next, we need to
Second
act for
pilier
the
de
sake of
notre
human rights,
organisation.
which is the second pillar of our
Il est de notre
organization.
responsabilité
It
collective
is
de
our
protéger
collective
nos jeunes
responsibility to
en
protect
promouvant un
our young
espace numérique
people by promoting
sécurisé
a
et conforme au
secure
droit international.
digital space that is in line with
À cet égard,
international
la
law.
France a été
In this
pionnière au niveau
regard, France
national et
has been
européen,
a leader at the
notamment par
national and
l'adoption de
European
la loi
levels, including with the
visant à
adoption
sécuriser et
of a
réguler
law aiming to
l'espace
secure
numérique en
and regulate the
2024,
digital space
loi
in
qui renforce la
2024.
protection des
This is a
enfants
law that
face à la
strengthens
pornographie
child
en ligne.
protection against online
Comme un nombre
pornography.
croissant de
Like
partenaires,
a growing
la
number
France a
of
décidé
partners,
d'encadrer
France
l'accès des
decided
moins de 15
to
ans aux réseaux
restrict
sociaux
the
pour mieux
access
les
of children
protéger.
under 15 to social
Parce
networks
que
to better
l'espace
protect them.
numérique n'a pas de
Because the
frontières,
digital space
la
knows
France a
no
lancé en
borders,
2021
in
avec l'UNICEF
2021, together with
un appel à
UNICEF,
l'action
France launched
pour
a
défendre les droits de
call
l'enfant
to
dans
action to
l'environnement
defend
numérique,
the rights of the
puis en
child in the
2022
digital
un
environment,
laboratoire
and then in
pour la protection
2022
de
launched
l'enfance en
an
ligne
online child
afin de développer
protection
des
lab
solutions
to
innovantes
develop
pour mieux
innovative
protéger les
solutions
enfants.
for the better protection of children
Enfin,
online.
il faut agir
And lastly,
concrètement pour combler
we
le
must
fossé
act
numérique, pour offrir à
tangibly
tous nos jeunes
to
un égal accès aux
ensure
nouvelles
that all young
technologies.
people have
C'est le
access to
troisième
new
pilier
technologies, and that
relatif au
is the
développement.
third pillar, the one related to
Utiliser avec
development,
pédagogie et dans un cadre
used
régulé,
with pedagogy
Internet
and
et
in a
l'intelligence
regulated
artificielle
framework.
facilitent
Internet and
considérablement
artificial
l'accès
intelligence
universel à l'éducation,
greatly
la
facilitate
lutte contre
universal
les
access to
exclusions
education, as well as
et la
combating
formation à
exclusion
l'esprit
and
critique.
shaping
Autant de
critical
remparts,
thinking.
vous
All
l'avez
of these, as you have
contre la
said,
haine et
are
pour prévenir
ramparts,
les
bastions
conflits.
against hatred and
La
help to
France
prevent
soutient
conflicts in the
les actions
future.
concrètes
France
engagées par les Nations
supports the
Unies,
tangible
en
actions
particulier
taken by the
l'UNESCO et
United Nations, in
l'UNICEF,
particular by
pour
UNESCO and
mobiliser les
UNICEF,
technologies
to
au
mobilize
service de la
technologies strategies for the protection of children via the anticipation of conflict risks, a more accurate needs mapping, and also expanded access to healthcare services, among other things. resources. France holds the presidency of the G7 this year and has made the protection of children one of its priorities. Madam President, to conclude, the protection of children and young people affected by armed conflicts is of concern to all of us. The engagement of the United Nations, and in particular that of the Security Council, remains essential in that regard, and your presence is an encouragement, as was the case for several decades, several days ago, the contribution of another First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, in the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for kind words, and thank you, representative of France, for the statement. Thank you. I give the floor to the representative of Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam President,
j'aimerais avant tout propos
first of all,
féliciter
I
les
would
États-Unis
like to
d'Amérique
congratulate the
pour leur
United States
accession à la
of
présidence
America
du
on
Conseil en ce
acceding
mois
to
de
the
mars
presidency
2026
of the
et les
Council in this
remercier
month
pour
of
la
March
tenue de cette réunion
2026. And I would like
consacrée à
to
une
thank you
problématique
for
dont
this
l'importance
meeting
est
on such an
déterminante et
important
cruciale,
and decisive
aussi
and
bien pour
crucial
mon
topic
pays que
for my
pour de
country,
nombreuses régions
as
du
well
monde
as for many
affectées
other
par la
regions
guerre
in the
et les
world who are
conflits armés.
impacted by
À
war
cet
and
égard, la
armed
République
conflict.
démocratique du Congo
In
salue
this regard, the
les
Democratic Republic of
initiatives
the Congo
visant à renforcer la
welcomes the
mobilisation
initiatives
internationale
aimed at
en
strengthening
faveur du
international
bien-être et
mobilization
du futur des
so as
enfants
to
à
ensure the
l'ère du
well-being
numérique
and
et
future
réaffirme
of the
son
children in the
attachement à
digital
toute
age.
dynamique
We reaffirm
multilatérale
our commitment
permettant
to
de
all
protéger l'enfant
multilateral
et de
efforts
garantir
to
son droit
protect
fondamental
children
à
and to
l'éducation.
ensure their fundamental
Mon
right to
pays
education.
vous rend de ce
My
fait un hommage
country would like to
appuyé,
pay
très
a
distinguée Première Dame des
tribute
États-Unis
to
d'Amérique,
you, First Lady of
pour
the
votre
United
engagement
States,
en faveur de
for your
l'intégrité et de la
commitment
dignité
to
des
the
enfants dans
integrity
le monde.
and dignity of
Nous remercions
children
par la
in
même
the
occasion
world. We
Madame
also
Rosemary
thank
Di
Madame
Carlo, secrétaire
Rosemary Di
générale
Carlo,
adjointe des Nations Unies,
Under
pour
Secretary
son
General
exposé.
of the United Nations,
Madame
for
la
their
Présidente,
statement.
garantir un
Madam
accès
President,
effectif à l'éducation
guaranteeing
et
an
aux
effective
technologies
access to
numériques pour les
education and
enfants en
digital
situation de
technologies for
conflit
children in situations
constitue
of
pour la
conflict
République
is,
démocratique du
for
Congo,
us, the Democratic
une
Republic of the
réalité
Congo,
essentielle.
is an essential
Depuis plus de 3
reality
décennies,
fact.
notre pays
For
connaît des
3
cycles
decades,
récurrents de
our
violence
country has been
et de conflits
witnessing
armés,
circles
particulièrement
of
dans sa partie
repeated
orientale.
violence and armed conflicts,
Cette situation
particularly in the
prive
eastern
depuis
part.
30 ans
This has
des
been
millions
the
d'enfants
situation has
de la
prevailed for 13
jouissance d'un
years,
droit
and
pourtant
millions
fondamental,
of
celui
children
d'accéder
have
à une
been
éducation
deprived
sûre,
of their fundamental right,
inclusive et de
access to
qualité.
education which is safe,
À
inclusive, and
titre
of high
d'exemple,
quality.
rien que dans la
Let me give you
province
an
du
example.
Sud-Kivu,
Just in
où
the
opère
South Kivu
impunément
province,
depuis
where
le
with
début de l'année
impunity, since the
2025
beginning of
le mouvement
2025,
M23
we
et les
have been
forces de
witnessing
défense
the movement of
rwandaises RDF,
M23
en violation
and
de
the
nos lois
RDF, the
nationales,
Rwanda
de la
Defense
Charte des
Forces,
Nations
in
Unies,
violation
des
of
principes
national laws,
élémentaires
the
du droit
UN
international et du droit
Charter,
international
basic principles of
humanitaire,
international law,
l'impact du
international
conflit sur
humanitarian
l'éducation
law,
est alarmant.
and therefore
D'abord,
the impact of
la
conflict on
gratuité de
education
l'enseignement
has
est
been
mise en
as
mal.
follows. First of all,
Les troupes rwandaises et les rebelles du M23
free
ayant
of
décidé d'imposer
charge
des
of
frais de scolarité dans
schooling
les
has
écoles
been
privées et
undermined
publiques des territoires
because
sous leur
the
contrôle.
Rwandan forces M23 decided to
Les
impose
statistiques
schooling
renseignent
fees.
que sur
Next, statistics are telling
8419
us
écoles,
that 8,419
1768
schools,
écoles, dont 71
1,768
écoles
schools,
maternelles,
out of which
1022
71
écoles primaires
primary
et
schools
675 écoles
and
secondaires ne sont
675
aujourd'hui
secondary
plus
schools
fonctionnelles.
today are no longer
Parmi
functioning.
elles, 167 écoles
Out
abritant
of them,
72
167 schools
214
with
élèves, dont 36
72,000
068 filles
school
sont au
children, out
moment
of them
où nous
36,000
réunissons
children
ici, occupés
are
par les
at
groupes armés.
this point occupied by
Madame la
armed
Présidente,
groups.
en
Madam
règle
President,
générale,
generally
la
speaking,
République démocratique du
Democratic
Congo a fait
Republic
de
of the
l'éducation
Congo
un pilier
has
central de sa
erected
politique de
education into a
résilience et
central
de
pillar
développement.
of its policy of
Fort
resilience
de
and
son capital
development.
humain
We
essentiellement
are
jeune,
proud of our human
l'éducation
capital, of our
constitue
young
pour mon
people.
pays
Therefore,
non
education
seulement
for
un
my
droit
country is
fondamental,
not
mais
just a
également
fundamental right,
un pilier
but
majeur
it
de sa
also is a
stabilité.
major pillar of
La
our
politique
stability.
de la gratuité de
The
l'enseignement
free
décrétée par le
schooling,
président de la
which was
République,
decreed
son
by the
Excellence
President of
Félix
the
Antoine
Republic,
Tshisekedi
His
Tshilombo,
Excellency Felix
depuis
Antoine
son
Tshisekedi
avènement à la
Tshilombo,
magistrature
since he
suprême en
acceded
2019,
to his high office
répond
in
de cette vision
2019,
d'améliorer
is a
l'accès à
reflection
l'éducation
of
et aux
this
nouvelles
view that we
technologies.
need to improve access
À
to
cette
education and new
politique s'ajoute
technologies.
l'adoption en
In addition to this
2025
policy,
de la
we in
stratégie de
2025
l'éducation et de la
adopted the
formation en
education
situation d'urgence
and emergency training
2025-2029
strategy
à
covering
bâtir un
2025
système
to
éducatif
2029, which is to
inclusif et
build an
protecteur
education system
capable
which
de
is
garantir
resilient,
la
inclusive, and
continuité de
is a measure of
l'apprentissage
protection
avant, pendant et
capable
après
of
les crises.
ensuring the continuity
Cette
of learning
stratégie
before, during, and
susmentionnée
after
s'accompagne
crises.
d'un engagement
This
résolu de la
strategy is
République
accompanied
démocratique du
by
Congo à
the
réduire
commitment of
la
the
fracture numérique
DRC
qui affecte
to reduce the
particulièrement
digital gap,
les zones
which
touchées
is
par les conflits.
particularly impacting
Madame la
those areas
Présidente,
which are
le
in
recours au
conflict.
numérique
Madam
s'impose
President,
aujourd'hui comme
using
une voie
digital
essentielle
technologies
pour
today
atténuer
is
les
an
effets des conflits
essential
sur l'éducation.
means of
Les
mitigating
plateformes
the
numériques,
effect of conflicts
les
of
outils
education.
mobiles et les solutions
Digital
d'apprentissage à
platforms,
distance
mobile
peuvent
devices,
maintenir
remote
un lien
learning
pédagogique
tools
pour
can
les enfants
maintain a
déplacés
learning
internes,
tool for those
ceux
children
vivant dans
which
des
are
zones
internally
enclavées ou
displaced,
dans des camps de
those who live
déplacés.
in
De même,
enclaves or
les
in
avancées en matière
displaced
d'intelligence
camps.
artificielle peuvent contribuer à
Similarly,
accompagner
the
les enseignants,
advances of artificial
adapter les
intelligence can also
contenus
help with
pédagogiques
education.
et
They
fournir
can
un appui
accompany pedagogical efforts
psychosocial
and provide
aux enfants
psychosocial
victimes de
support to those
traumatisme.
children who are victims
Madame la
of trauma.
Présidente de la République
Madam
démocratique
President,
du Congo
the
est
Democratic Republic
convaincue
of the
que le
Congo
respect
is
et la
convinced
protection des
that
droits de
the
l'homme,
respect and
notamment
the protection
du
of the
droit
human
des
rights,
enfants,
in
du droit
particular the rights of
international
children,
humanitaire,
of the
doivent
international
demeurer
humanitarian
au
law
cœur de toutes les
must remain
stratégies
at the
que
heart
nous
of
pourrions
all
mettre en œuvre
strategies that we
afin
are
d'assurer la
implementing.
paix et la
And this
sécurité dans le monde.
we're implementing to
Nous devons,
ensure
pour ce
peace
faire,
and security
œuvrer
in the world.
collectivement afin
We
que
have to work
ces
together to
dimensions
make
souvent
sure that
dissoutes
these
dans
dimensions,
l'approche,
very
l'analyse et
frequently
l'évaluation des
lost
conflits
in
soient
approach
davantage
analysis and
considérées.
evaluation of
C'est
conflict,
pourquoi
take
la
pride of
République
place.
démocratique
And
du
that is
Congo
why the
appelle
Democratic Republic of the
à un
Congo
appui
is
international
calls for
renforcé
a
pour le développement
strengthened international support
d'infrastructures
for the
numériques dans les zones
development of digital
fragiles et post-conflit,
infrastructures in fragile and
à des
post-conflict
partenariats
areas,
responsables avec le
for
secteur
responsible
privé
partnership with the
fondés
private
sur la
sector,
transparence et la
partnership based on
redevabilité.
transparency and
Madame la
accountability.
Présidente,
Madam President,
terre des grands enjeux,
we
notamment au
are
regard
a
de ces
large
dotations en
country,
minerais critiques
a very rich country,
indispensables à la
especially when it
révolution
comes
numérique
to
mondiale.
minerals which are
La République
necessary for the
démocratique du Congo
current
estime
digital
que la
revolution.
technologie ne
We
doit
think
jamais
that
être un facteur
technology should
d'exclusion
never be a
pour ces
factor
enfants.
of
Elle
exclusion
doit au
for our
contraire
children. To
devenir
the
un
contrary,
instrument de
it needs to
résilience,
become an
de
instrument for
réparation et
resilience,
d'égalité des chances.
reparations, and
Pour
equality of
conclure,
opportunities.
la
To
République
conclude,
démocratique du
the
Congo
Democratic
tient
Republic
à
of the
affirmer
Congo would like
sa
to
détermination
affirm
à
its
œuvrer avec
determination
l'ensemble
to work
de ses
together with its
partenaires,
partners,
y compris la plateforme
including
Construire
through the
ensemble
platform
l'avenir,
Building Future
portée par
Together,
la distinguée
which
première
is
dame
put
Melania
forth
Trump,
by the
pour
distinguished First
protéger ses
Lady
enfants,
Melania Trump,
reformer
to
son
protect
système
children,
éducatif,
to reform our
intégrer
education system, to
positivement les outils numériques,
progressively integrate
malgré les
into it
défis
numerical
sécuritaires
tools
et
despite the
garantir
security
qu'aucun enfant,
challenges, and to
même
ensure
en
that
situation
no
de conflit,
child, even
ne
in
soit
a situation
discriminé,
of conflict,
mais qu'il
be
puisse continuer
discriminated
à
against, but
bénéficier de
rather
son
that they
droit à
should
l'éducation,
continue
au
benefiting from their
développement
right to
et à
education,
la réalisation de son
development,
rêve
and the
légitime
implementation
pour
of
un
their
avenir meilleur
legitimate
à l'ère
dream
du numérique.
to have a
Je vous
better
remercie.
future in the digital era. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Madam President. Denmark thanks the United States for highlighting this critical topic of the first day of the presidency. And we commend the First Lady of the United States for her presence here today and for showing leadership on this issue. Let me also thank Undersecretary General Di Carlo for her sobering briefing. Madam President, as we've heard, more than 85 million children are out of school in crisis settings. From Sudan to the Sahel, from Afghanistan to Gaza, too often, too many school-aged children are prevented from learning. As members of this council, we have a common responsibility to protect education in conflict. I commend the efforts by the United Nations in this regard, notably UNICEF, UNESCO, and the Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict. For example, in Ukraine, the UNHCR supports access to education from online learning for refugees to offline learning at underground schools near the front line. In Lebanon, UNICEF assists access to digital learning for Syrian refugees. And, as we've heard from the USG, in Afghanistan, UNESCO supports broadcasting of educational programs to reach learners in their homes. These are examples of innovative initiatives that make a difference for children and young people affected by conflict. But we can do even more to leverage the potential of technology for education. Madam President, I'll raise 3 points today. First, we must make even greater use of innovation and technology to support safe and protective access to education in conflict-affected situations. When conflict erupts and it becomes unsafe to go to school, digital tools can enable students to continue their education and connect with their peers, but it requires access to digital devices and often also access to the internet. Children in the poorest places in the world, which count many conflict-affected contexts, are more likely to be excluded from access to the internet. In short, eliminating the digital divide will help broadening access to education, to leave no child behind. We must keep this in mind as we seek to protect education during armed conflict in accordance with Security Council Resolution 2601. Second, Madam President, the digital space does not come risk-free. We know that it brings risks for children's safety. In context of conflict and instability, these risks can take many forms. Online platforms can be used to spread disinformation, and manipulated content could fuel polarization, instability, or lead to radicalization. Young peace builders could be targeted. Young human rights defenders may face reprisals or threats, both on and offline. Young women and girls may be targeted by technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Member states, along with tech companies, must prioritize protection in the digital space. While tech companies have great power in shaping children's digital experiences, they also have a great responsibility to protect children's rights. We support that the Office of the SRSD for Children and Armed Conflict engages with online platform operators on protection. Third, Madam President, as an international community, we must collectively ensure that parties to conflict uphold international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law. Parties to conflict must commit to specific, structured steps to end and prevent grave violations against children and uphold accountability. As we sat in connection with the Red Hand Day on Education to prevent the recruitment of youth of children just recently, Denmark believes that we need not just to reflect, but to recommit. Recommit to the children of Haiti, who should be able to enjoy a safe learning environment without fear of being recruited by gangs. To the children in Sudan, who are attacked, starved, and displaced. And to the children in Ukraine, who have suffered abductions and endless attacks on their schools and infrastructure during the 4 long years of Russia's full-scale invasion. Schools must be protected from attack. The international legal framework is clear on this. Madam President, in closing, around this table, we must demand that safe and inclusive education is available to all children. We must support access to quality education. Where there is access is disrupted by conflict, we should safely leverage the potential of technology, because education is not only a fundamental right, it is a foundation for sustainable peace, stability, and development. Thank you.
Thank you, representative of Denmark. I give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable señora Melania Trump, primera dama.
Esteemed Mrs. Melania Trump, First Lady of the United States of America, Panama congratulates the delegation of the United States on assuming the presidency of the Security Council for the month of March, and we would like to wish you every success in this delicate undertaking. We would also like to thank Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing and the U.S. delegation for convening this timely debate on the role of technology in guaranteing access to education for children affected by armed conflict. This is a vision that is fully aligned with the priority agenda of the U.S. First Lady as part of the Fostering the Future Together initiative. And by happy coincidence, Just a few
tuvimos el
days ago,
privilegio de
we had
convocar
the
una
privilege
reunión
of
bajo
convening
la Fórmula A
an Area
en
Formula
ocasión del
meeting
Día Internacional de la Mano Roja,
to mark the
enfocada
International Day of the
precisamente en
Red
la
Hand,
promoción de una
focused
educación
specifically
segura,
on promoting
inclusiva y
safe,
continua,
inclusive, and
como
continual
herramienta para
education
prevenir el
as a tool
reclutamiento y
for
la
preventing
utilización de
the
niños en
recruitment
conflictos
and use of
armados.
children in armed conflict.
Esa conversación nos dejó como
That
lección
conversation
una convicción
left us
clara.
with one clear
La
conviction,
educación
and that
no
is
es
that
únicamente
education
un derecho,
is not only a
es
right,
también una herramienta
it is
de
also
prevención
a
valiosa.
tool, a valuable tool for
Cuando un
prevention.
niño permanece conectado a su proceso
When a
educativo,
child remains
ya sea
connected,
en el
plugged into
aula
their
o
education
mediante
process, be
medios
it in the
digitales,
classroom or through digital
disminuye
technologies,
significativamente su
it
exposición
significantly
al
reduces their
reclutamiento, la
exposure to
explotación o la
recruitment,
manipulación.
exploitation, or manipulation.
Hoy, millones de niños continúan
Today,
viendo
millions of
interrumpida su
children
educación
continue to see their
debido a
education
ataques a
interrupted
escuelas,
due to attacks
desplazamiento
on schools,
forzado
forced
y la
displacement,
militarización
and
del
the
entorno civil.
militarization of the
En
civilian
ese
environment.
contexto, la
In this
tecnología
context,
ha pasado de ser una herramienta
technology has gone from
complementaria
being
para
a
convertirse
complementary, a
en un
supplementary tool,
salvavidas.
to become a
Las
lifesaver.
plataformas abiertas, la educación a
Open
distancia,
platforms,
los
remote
contenidos
learning,
transmitidos por radio o
content
televisión,
broadcast over
y las
radio or
soluciones
television,
apoyadas por inteligencia
and
artificial,
AI-supported
cuando son
solutions,
utilizadas
when
con
they are
responsabilidad,
used responsibly,
resultan útiles para
are
mantener la
useful
continuidad del
in order to
aprendizaje
maintain the
en algunos de los
continuity of
entornos
learning
más
in
complejos
some
del
of the
mundo.
most complex environments in the
Iniciativas
world.
como el Global Digital
Initiatives
Learning
such as the
Gateway
Global
de
Digital
UNESCO y
Learning
UNICEF,
Gateway from
o
UNESCO
el
and
desarrollo de
UNICEF,
marcos de
or the
competencias en
development
inteligencia
of
artificial
AI
para
skills
docentes
frameworks for
reflejan un
teachers,
reconocimiento
reflect a
creciente.
growing
La tecnología
recognition
puede ayudar a
that
reducir
technology can
brechas,
help to
pero
reduce
solo
gaps,
si es
but
accesible,
only if
inclusiva
it is
y
accessible,
ética.
inclusive, and ethical.
Las experiencias en terreno así lo confirman.
Experiences in the
En
field
Ucrania,
confirm
según datos
this. In
verificados por
Ukraine,
UNICEF,
according to data
el
verified by
conflicto ha
UNICEF,
afectado
the
a miles de
conflict has
instalaciones
affected thousands of
educativas,
educational
obligando a
facilities,
más de 1 millón
forcing
de
more than a
estudiantes
million
a depender
students
hoy
to
de
depend
modalidades
today
de aprendizajes
on
híbridas o
hybrid
remotas
or
para
remote
continuar su
learning
educación.
modalities in order to continue their
La distribución de
education.
dispositivos
The
digitales y la
distribution of
capacitación
digital
docente
devices and
han
teacher
demostrado que la
training
conectividad
has
combinada con
shown that
formación
connectivity
adecuada
combined with
puede
proper
sostener
training
sistemas
can
educativos
support
incluso
education
bajo fuego.
systems even when under
En
fire.
Afganistán,
In
donde
Afghanistan,
más de 2 millones
where
de
more than
niñas
2
siguen
million
excluidas de
girls
la educación
remain
secundaria,
excluded from secondary
el uso de hubs
education,
digitales
the use of
comunitarios,
digital community
programas
hubs and
educativos por radio y
education
televisión
programs over radio
han
and
permitido
television
llevar el
has made
aprendizaje
it
al
possible
hogar,
to bring
reduciendo
learning into
riesgos
the
y
home, thus
manteniendo
reducing
redes de
risks
apoyo.
and maintaining support
En Gaza,
networks. In
donde gran
Gaza,
parte del
where a
sistema
large part
educativo
of the
ha sido
education system
devastado,
has been
el lanzamiento de un
devastated,
campus
the
virtual
launching
por
of
parte de
a
la UNESCO
virtual
para
campus
la
by
educación
UNESCO
superior
for
ha
higher
ofrecido
education
a miles de
has offered
estudiantes una
thousands of
oportunidad
students
para
an
continuar sus
opportunity to
estudios
continue their
desde fuera
studies
de la zona de conflicto.
from
Los últimos
outside the
días,
conflict
los
zone.
niños en varios
In
países
recent
del
days,
Oriente Medio
children in
han
various
tenido
countries
que
in the Middle
recurrir a
East have
plataformas
had
educativas
to make use of
virtuales
virtual
al verse
educational
afectada su
platforms
educación
because their
por los
education has been
efectos de
affected
otro
by the
conflicto
impacts
armado.
of another armed
Señora
conflict.
Presidencia,
Madam
estas
President,
experiencias nos muestran el potencial de
this
la
experience
tecnología
demonstrates
como
the
herramienta
potential
de
of technology
resiliencia.
as a tool for
Sin embargo,
resilience.
tenemos que
However,
reconocer
we
que
have
el
to
espacio
recognize
digital
that the
no
digital
es
space
neutral.
is not neutral.
Las mismas plataformas que
Those same
facilitan el
platforms that
aprendizaje
facilitate
pueden
learning
exponer a niños,
can
especialmente
also
a
expose
aquellos que ya viven
children, particularly
situaciones de
those that are
trauma,
already
a riesgos de
experiencing trauma,
explotación,
to the risk of
radicalización,
exploitation,
desinformación y
radicalization,
violencia en línea.
misinformation, or online
Según
violence.
datos de la UNESCO,
According to
uno de
UNESCO
cada 3
data,
estudiantes
1
en
in
el mundo
3 students
sufre
around the
acoso
world
escolar.
suffers
Una
school bullying.
realidad que no
That
solo
is a
persiste,
reality
sino
that
que puede
not only persists,
intensificarse
but it
en
may also
entornos
grow
digitales,
worse in digital
sustancialmente
environments,
en contextos
which
de desplazamiento y
substantially take place in
vulnerabilidad.
contexts of
Por ello,
displacement and
señora
vulnerability.
Presidenta, Panamá
Therefore,
subraya
Madam President,
algunos
Panama would like to
principios
underscore a few
fundamentales.
fundamental
La
principles.
tecnología debe
Technology
complementar
must
pero
be
no
a
puede ni
supplement
debe
to, but
reemplazar
it
la
cannot nor
educación
should it
presencial.
replace in-person
Las escuelas
education.
siguen siendo espacios
Schools
esenciales
continue to be
para el
essential
desarrollo
spaces
integral,
for the
la
comprehensive
protección y la
development of,
recuperación de la
protection of,
infancia.
and the recovery
Las
of
alianzas
children.
público-privadas
Public-private
son
partnerships
necesarias,
are
pero deben
necessary,
sustentarse en marcos
but they have
éticos
to
sólidos
be
que
rooted
respeten
in
los derechos
solid
del
ethical
niño
frameworks
en
that
el
respect the
entorno
rights of the
digital.
child in the digital
Además,
environment.
debe evitarse que la innovación
Moreover, we must
amplíe
make
la brecha
sure
digital.
that this does not
Sin
expand the
acceso
digital
equitativo,
divide.
la
Without equitable
tecnología puede
access,
profundizar
technology
desigualdades
could
ya
deepen
existentes.
inequalities that already exist.
Señora Presidenta, nuestro país
Madam President,
considera que
our
la
country
inteligencia
considers
artificial
that artificial
puede
intelligence
apoyar a los
can
profesores,
support
pero nunca
teachers, but
sustituirlos.
never replace them.
La información docente, la alfabetización digital,
Digital
y la
literacy, training for teachers,
significativa
and the
de
meaningful
los propios
participation
deben
of
ser
young people
parte de
themselves
nuestra respuesta.
all need to be part and parcel of our
Garantizar la
response.
continuidad educativa
Guaranteeing
en
the
contextos de
continuity of
conflicto
education
no
in
es solo una
conflict
cuestión de
situations is not just
porque
a
privar a
development
una
issue,
generación
because
de
depriving a
educación
generation of
es,
education,
en última instancia,
at the end of the
sembrar
day,
las semillas
means
de nuevas
sowing the
crisis.
seeds of
En este
future
sentido,
crises. And in that
reafirmamos
regard,
que el
we
acceso
reaffirm
seguro,
that
inclusivo y
safe,
equitativo
secure,
a la
inclusive,
educación,
and equitable access to
incluida su
education,
dimensión digital,
including its
es
digital
parte
dimension,
integral de la
is
protección
an
de la
inalienable
niñez
part
en
of the
conflictos
protection
armados.
of children
Muchas
in armed
gracias.
conflicts. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
Liberia thanks you, Madam First Lady, for bringing your important voice and distinguished office to the issues of children in conflict and their much needed access to education and technology. We also thank the United Kingdom for its effective stewardship of the Security Council during the month of February, and USG DiCarlo for her instructive briefing. We warmly welcome the United States as it assumes the presidency for March, and thank the United States delegation for convening this timely meeting. In today's world, the intersection of children, technology, and education defines not only individual futures, but, as rightly noted by you, Madam President, the trajectory of peace itself. In conflict settings, when classrooms fall silent and connectivity is severed, the loss is not only educational, it is generational. Efforts that restore learning, expand safe digital access, and protect children from technological exploitation are therefore investments in stability and human dignity. Madam President, Excellencies, today, Liberia will speak from a past that taught us what conflict steals and what education restores. We remember all too well what it means to be the child the world sought to protect. The classroom without a roof. The generation told to wait for peace before being allowed to learn. 14 years of civil conflict destroyed our schools, dispersed our teachers, and recruited children before they were literate. From all of these, we learned a painful truth. When education collapses during conflict, the conflict does not end. It simply mutates. This is why Liberia approaches today's discussion not as a development debate, but as a matter of international security. Around the world, more than 224 million children living in crisis settings are currently out of school, according to global education partners. Many before me have quoted even grimmer statistics. This is not just an educational emergency, therefore, it is a security emergency, a protection emergency, and a generational emergency. A child denied learning in a conflict zone is exposed not only to illiteracy, but to recruitment, manipulation, and exploitation disguised as survival. Similarly, a community deprived of education does not simply lose opportunity, it actually inherits instability. In these contexts, digital education is simply not a luxury. It is actually a stabilizer. It is prevention policy. Across West Africa, post-conflict recovery has shown us that the path from ceasefire to resilience actually runs through the classroom. Within ECOWAS, we have seen that rebuilding infrastructure alone is insufficient. Rebuilding human capital is what prevents relapses into conflict. Increasingly, this rebuilding must be digital. Africa is not waiting to be transformed by technology. We are trying to reshape technology under difficult constraints. We are developing low bandwidth platforms, solar-powered systems, and community-driven learning models precisely because our circumstances demand innovation that is efficient, resilient, and inclusive. In my home country, Liberia, when national emergencies halted schooling, community radio delivered lessons across counties, while solar-powered learning centers reached communities far beyond the grid. Children shared devices, but more importantly, they shared knowledge. Our innovations did not emerge from abundance. They emerged from determination. From these experiences, Liberia offers 3 proposals. First, the establishment of a post-conflict education digital recovery window within existing international financing mechanisms. Digital learning infrastructure, including connectivity, devices, teacher training, and child protection safeguards, must be embedded in early recovery frameworks and not treated as a secondary priority. Second, we are developing a pilot network of solar-powered community digital learning hubs. These hubs function independently of unstable grades, deliver offline capable curriculum, provide teacher training modules, and offer safe digital access points for displaced and conflict-affected children.